You may have heard of the Ewing Theory. That's when a team loses its star player and somehow becomes better after being written off by fans and analysts. Only that never happened to Patrick Ewing. And more importantly, Ewing Theory isn't just about overrating a star player. It's about the star player's teammates and coaches. And 2026 has given us an incredible example of this phenomenon. The 2026 Celtics not only lost Jayson Tatum after his devastating Achilles tear, but championship starters Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, ageless wonder Al Horford, and even backup center Luke Kornet. They were completely written off by most analysts, projected to have a gap year waiting for Tatum to return in 2027. But over the last 2 months, the Celtics have the best record in the league behind an historically efficient offense. That's right, Boston lost 3 starters from a championship team, including their leading scorer who finished 4th in MVP, and their offense got better. And on paper, not too much has changed. Boston's still last in the league in pace and free throw rate. They almost never turn the ball over, and they take a ton of threes. So you might think they kept playing the same style, but that's not what happened at all. Despite Brown's scoring upgrade, despite his otherworldly isolation this season, and Boston's tendency to continue to hunt for mismatches and shoot lots of threes, these possessions are fundamentally different than their possessions from 2025 or their 2024 championship season. Boston's once again the slowest offense in the league, but it's not from meticulously trying to force a switch onto the right mismatch. It's from patiently working for better and better shots. They used to set a lot of screens to hunt these switches, whereas now it almost feels like their base screening option is the Spain pick and roll with a third player involved to set a back screen. I'm not sure any team runs as many Spain pick and rolls as the Celtics, and this is where the offense gets pretty progressive. They have a lot of activity around the elbows and the middle of the floor. Whether it's Spain running a guard horizontally into a fake screen, or even situations where the guard kind of cuts right across the face of the court to mess with the defense. This is technically an isolation for Jaylen Brown, but to remove this help defender, Pritchard cuts right across the paint and parts the Red Seas for JB. Here's another one with White moving into that Spain position, but then he just pulls his defender out of the way. And Indiana actually calls out a Spain here. The defender's looking for that back screen, but it's just a runway for Pritchard, who does a little TJ McConnell impression. The way Boston uses this middle part of the floor reminds me of the 2025 Pacers, who generated an incredible offense with these cutting-edge tactics in their legendary run to the finals. And my favorite part of the Boston offense echoes that Pacers team, with the center roaming around the elbow, looking to set screens or get into actions with the guards as an offensive turnstile. When their center's near the baseline, he often looks to float back up to the free throw area, and he can set a flare screen for other guards to generate great looks. If you look at a play like this, again, Neemias Queta floats to the elbow area here, tells Pritchard to play through White, and that isn't just pick and roll action, but the handoff game, and this setup is trickier to defend. In a typical pick and roll situation, the wing defender is pulling over to help on the roller, and more importantly, the corner defender knows he needs to slide to the paint to clog up that roll pass. But in Boston's case, the first action occupies the big man defender, and moving to the elbow means he's recovering as this happens. The wing defender's still worried about Pritchard, and the corner doesn't even recognize what's happening at warp speed. This was just a minute earlier. Queta again signals to change sides. Sacramento's screen call is late. The corner again is slow to recognize it. Then Brown brilliantly cuts behind the help. So there are a ton of advantages from roaming around the elbow like this, including better spacing. Queta can't shoot, but he's pulled his defender out of the lane, making the rest of this easy for Pritchard and company. I have a confession to make. I use spreadsheets. I know, it's terrible, but sometimes I pull from my variety of burrito purchases into a spreadsheet for a burrito analysis, and there's an app for that. Today's sponsor is Rocket Money. People love this app because it avoids spreadsheeting and does a bunch of analysis for you so you can do better at budgeting and saving money. Money, there's a thing no one cares about. The app keeps track of most subscription services. It's easy to forget one of these things, or sometimes you cancel one, but you didn't actually catch it, and you're trying to scan through all those esoteric coding transactions that are really opaque. But with Rocket Money, you can easily see that you're still subscribed to Burrito Weekly, and then you can decide if maybe you shouldn't be spending so much on a burrito magazine. I can feel your judgment. With just a few clicks, you can cancel subscriptions in the Rocket Money app. Rocket Money is not only free to download, but you can get a free premium trial with extra features when you sign up with our link at rocketmoney.com/thinking. There's also a link in the description down below, rocketmoney.com/thinking. Compare this to last year's more stationary offense, where Boston wasn't merely playing one-on-one against mismatches, but the big man was parked in the dunker spot, which meant an extra defender clogged up the paint. And that's much easier to stop because the defense knows where to be and they can really load up on the ball. By contrast, this year's offense is layered, hunting for a switch first, only to run another guard over as a screener. The bigs at the elbow are ready to set a flare screen. Boom, it's a slip and a dunk. And so Boston's last in pace, not because they're setting up some mismatch, but because they're churning and probing through multiple actions to find better and better shots.
What separates winning and losing, it's a very small margin. It's a small margin of the details, it's a small margin of the analytics, it's a small margin of execution. And the ability to win those margins, the separation between winning and losing is very, very close.
A key here is that Brown has not tried to become Tatum. He's continued to improve gradually as a playmaker and even ball handler, and his mid-range scoring has gone berserk. He's nearly doubled his volume of mid-range shots this year, leading the league with nearly 12 mid-range attempts per game, converting a sizzling 48% of them. Tatum, by comparison, shot 40% on about 6 mid-rangers a game over the last 3 years. He also ran 31 pick and rolls every 100 possessions last season, and when Jayson went to the bench, Brown basically took over that duty, running 35 every 100, whereas this year, Brown's down at just 26, with players like Pritchard and Derek White handling more pick and roll responsibilities. The Tatum Celtics were known for finding a weak spot, forcing a switch, and then playing one-on-one in isolation against that mismatch. And they were fairly efficient doing this because they had a number of mismatches to attack and a number of skilled players and shooters to make those mismatches work. This year's Celtics are less about the matchup and more about finding space to quickly attack. Brown's trailing in early offense. There's an ocean of space to his left. He immediately drives into it, and it's nearly an and one. When he pops out to the wing on this next play, a teammate empties out the corner to possibly screen, and Jaylen immediately attacks that empty space and does an SGA impression. Their spacing on some of these is thunder-like. Early isolation, not enough help comes to the ball, so Brown squeezes through all the way to the rim. And they do the same thing with Pritchard. He can drive into guards and forwards when he has space to attack, and Payton destroys non-elite defenders in the mid-range once Boston configures the floor like this and no one comes to help. He's shooting 57% on middies this season because he's hunting space instead of hunting a different mismatch. And remember, that spacing works because of elite shooting, so when help comes, it's relatively easy to find a good shooter. Another change for Boston is that when they do get a mismatch, they'll sometimes run another guard up to screen. They aren't worried about a second switch because that guard creates confusion and causes more problems for the defense trying to recover. So they'll get a switch, then maybe run a shooter up from the corner. That creates some defensive uncertainty, and suddenly that great shooter has a good look. This next play is a perfect example. Brown gets the switch. White then brings Kawhi Leonard into the action, but this somehow creates a wide open shot. And this is so nasty from White because he knows Kawhi wants to switch, avoids any contact so Brown's man doesn't switch, and running shooters at big men like this in uncomfortable spots is really tricky to defend. Brook Lopez thinks about the screen coming, which gives White a window to fire. So instead of looking to replace Tatum, Boston's redesigned their offense entirely. They're even crashing the boards more with these calculated rebounding runs, winning the possession battle by ranking 5th in the league in net shot attempts. If Tatum comes back this season and they revert to their style from last year, it's almost a guarantee they'll be less efficient because basketball isn't baseball. It's not a set of individual discrete events, but a sport of interactions, of a nearly unlimited combination of actions and strategies to solve the defense. Which brings us back to the Ewing Theory. When a star like Tatum leaves and the team gets better, yes, it says something about Tatum's replaceability or overall effectiveness. But it also says something about the teammates and the coaches around him. A more rigid coach would have played the same style, just centered around Jaylen Brown and, I suppose, Peyton Pritchard, and that would have been less effective. Mazzulla and even Brown deserve a ton of credit for not trying that. And like Ewing, the Celtics aren't actually better without Tatum. They've just been better on offense, which is incredible when factoring in how many other starters they lost. Also, you heard me right. The Ewing theory never actually applied to Patrick Ewing. The idea was first introduced by Bill Simmons in 1999 when one of his friends thought the Knicks always played better when Ewing was injured or saddled with foul trouble. Only the Knicks were actually much better with Ewing, at least during the substantial chunk of his career we have data for. If we look at plus-minus numbers, New York kind of fell apart without Patrick, and when he missed substantial chunks of time in his career, the Knicks were actually way worse. It wasn't until the shortened 99 season that they were finally better in 12 games without Ewing, when Patrick was 36 years old. So, who has this ever happened to? Well, it's rare, but Adrian Dantley somewhat fits the bill in the 1980s, although he wasn't exactly the star of Detroit when he finally left and they won championships. Ja Morant is a recent example with 2 seasons where he missed a ton of time and Memphis improved dramatically without him. And Carmelo Anthony's Nuggets were shockingly good after he was traded to New York in 2011. But I want to focus on Chris Webber's Sacramento Kings. When Webber missed a handful of games in 2000 and 2001, the Kings were only slightly worse. When he missed 28 games in 2002, Sacramento barely changed, still playing right around a 60-win pace. And in 2003, they played at a 61-win pace, whether Webber was in the lineup or not. Detailed play-by-play data tells the same story, with Sacramento playing nearly the same with or without Webber across those 4 years, setting the table for the ultimate experiment in 2004. Webber missed the first 58 games of that season with a knee injury and suspensions, and the Kings were better than ever, playing at a 62-win pace in his absence. Rick Adelman's corner offense still influences modern sets today, and empowered big men like Webber and Vlade Divac as part of playmaking hubs from the elbow. And Vlade was probably a better passer and decision maker, whereas Webber increased their turnovers and took a ton of low percentage shots. So not only was Sacramento incredible without him, but he dragged them down the rest of the year when he returned, and this was after years of showing zero or even negative impact in large samples of missed time, all while being considered an MVP candidate. What's more important here is the other half of the equation, where the rest of the team creates more than the sum of its parts. And that's exactly what's happened with the 2026 Celtics. Tatum has proven himself a star for years, but his removal forced Boston to squeeze the lemon harder, and they've come up with something incredibly effective with all these shooters, active big men, athletic rebounders, and Jaylen Brown. So the Ewing Theory, at least in basketball, isn't simply about the star. It's about reimagining how the rest of the team plays, about playing differently because the star is gone. In other words, Coach Joe Mazzulla didn't open his recipe book last summer and try to replace a shallot with an onion. The man took the same ingredients and cooked an entirely different dish. For the first time, Sports Business Classroom is at All-Star Weekend in sunny Los Angeles. This is my go-to recommendation to start a career in basketball. Our own Mike DeLaRosa went through their program, and it's a new curriculum this year with tons of big NBA names, media leadership, and more. Sign up with the code GREATDAY for $300 off at sportsbusinessclassroom.com/allstar. You can read more about the program there too. To get more content and support us directly, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. You can also join our video memberships on YouTube. Thanks a ton for your continued support over the years. And of course, I hope you're having a great day.